Welcome to the Grand Theft World podcast, hosted and sponsored by the fine members over at grandtheftworld.com. You know, if you haven't considered becoming a member yet, it's not just where you get all the members' benefits. It's where you get early access to a whole bunch of things. You get the town hall, you get the book reviews, all these great things. Go over to grandtheftworld.com, click the little blue corner button that says join community. Check it out. Check out your options. We appreciate it. Tonight, this is episode 133. We have a big show going on for you tonight. This show is going to contain a lot of information about the secular non-humanists. We have a couple guests tonight. We're going to get into defining who are they and what's their agenda. And you can see their agenda prevalent through many of the news stories tonight. First up, after 4 long years, we have the Durham report. And is it actionable? Are people going to jail? No. But what it paints out is a clear picture of a coup having occurred. That's if you watch one side of the news spectrum, or if you watch the other side, they say it's a nothing burger. So we're gonna have to break it open. We're gonna have to see what the substance, the evidence, what kind of veracity we can draw from these stories so that we have a coherent, non-fragmented understanding of these events as we go through in future weeks. It's going to continue to unfold. Next story, we have RFK Jr. has been making the rounds. He did a little stint on Breaking Points this past week where you get to hear Crystal Ball talk about Bill Gates' talking points and not get to hear RFK Jr. get a rebuttal in. So we're going to break into that non-debate and why someone like Crystal and her superficial understanding of events might be, rightfully so, a little scared to go against Bobby Kennedy Jr. So that's an enthralling clip. There's a lot of interesting things we can learn about the history of the people who push back against his books and his 400 citations on that evidence.
So RFK Jr. Went on the what's it called, Breaking Points with Crystal and Sagar, and Crystal did what's called the opposite of journalism. She pushed talking points from Big Pharma that are lies, and she's uninformed, ignorant, and arrogant. And she doesn't give RFK Jr. She makes accusations and then talks over him and doesn't allow him to answer the questions. And when he asks, "So what am I wrong about?" she won't tell him. So let's watch this. I don't know why I think she really wants to get back on MSNBC because that's the kind of show they do now. So here we go. Here we go.
So let me ask you about vaccines. This is an area.
Guys, come on, guys. Guys, and we're going to guys.
Where you and I have significant differences. And, just to level with you on this, like a lot of what you say I really respond to. I think you're a very genuine person. But the across the board, whether you want to call it vaccine skepticism or anti-vax advocacy, which has been a central part of what you've been up to for the past number of years, for me personally, it's an issue, and it's a real sort of red line. And I know I'm not alone in that, especially running in a Democratic primary. There are going to be other millions of people like me who have similar concerns. So how do you win them over? What's your message to people who think like I do?
Well, but just tell me where you think I got it wrong.
Well, I think
that's not coming. Okay, here we go.
You get it wrong when you draw a correlation between the rise of things like autism and the introduction of vaccines when there isn't hard scientific evidence tying those things together.
A correlation. There is a correlation.
Yeah, there is a correlation.
Doesn't mean
she
causation.
meant causation.
Yeah.
So she throws that out there, and he's ready to back it up. He's certainly ready. Let's watch.
How do you know there's not a hard scientific evidence?
Well, because the one major study that purported to show that was retracted, and the scientist who conducted it was,
Now, what you're doing now,
basically
Crystal,
fraudulently created. Listen,
no.
Hold on.
You're
but
raising this issue.
I don't want to get in a debate with you about this because you've spent your life.
Because he would embarrass you because you don't know anything about what you're talking about. And that's why you don't want to get into a debate. And you are sure you don't want to get into a debate, because if you got into a debate, everybody would, even more than we know now, we would reveal that you know nothing. People would know that you know nothing about what you're talking about. You haven't read any of the studies, and he would clean your clock, which is why you're doing such a dishonest and amateur. Well, it's not. It's a hack. This isn't an amateur interview job. This is a hack job. And that's what she's
Jimmy,
doing.
The people that maybe she thinks are qualified, they're never going to do it. They're never going to talk to him. So
that's right.
It's just left to someone like her.
That's right.
To be like, well, I trust this group for whatever reason, and how are you going to?
And she just talks over him.
Yeah.
And she just talks over him. Here we go.
pulling out this study. That I will tell you. Let me just tell you.
Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds.
Let me just tell you.
I'm not.
I've listened to.
She won't let him talk. She's been talking nonstop now for about 3 minutes straight, and
listen what she says. The next sentence she says.
Okay.
Hours of interviews with you.
No, you didn't.
She didn't. Did she say she listened to hours?
Yeah.
But you know what she didn't do? She didn't read his book.
Nope.
The bestseller, New York Times bestseller, Amazon bestseller for weeks, if not months. Bestseller. She didn't read that book because if she did, she wouldn't be saying this stupid shit.
With you, with an open mind, and I'm not persuaded. Now, maybe I'm wrong. That's possible. I'll hold it out there. People can watch. I thought Megyn Kelly did a phenomenal interview with you that went through all these claims piece by piece by piece. I really encourage people to watch that whole exchange because we won't be able to do it justice here in the 5 minutes we have left. But there are
Now, the reason why she can't do it justice in the 5 minutes they have left is completely manufactured and made up by her. She can take as much time as she wants to talk with him. This idea that she has to go to a break because there's another TV show coming in is not true. There's no other TV show coming. There's no commercial break they have to get to. They could talk to him, and I'm sure he would be glad to answer her questions and to make her and reveal that she doesn't know what she's talking about. But that's a little trick that Rachel did that's dishonest and hacky. And she said that, we only have 5 minutes left. They have as much time as she wants to have left. But the reason why that she said that is because she doesn't know her asshole from a hole in the ground when she's talking about this, but she sure knows how to repeat establishment talking points about Russiagate, about COVID, about lockdowns, about vaccines, and now about RFK Jr. without ever actually knowing anything about any of them.
She might have just had to pick up Kyle Kalinske from soccer.
Maybe that's what it was.
People like me who aren't persuaded and who see this as an issue, and the fact that it's been such a central part of your advocacy means I can't just sort of put it to the side and say, I'll just ignore, this piece that's been really important to you in your life. So you're running in a Democratic primary. You have a lot of people who feel even more strongly than me who think that,
At some point, she's going to let him talk. At some point, she's going to let him answer.
Dr. Fauci is a hero in all of these things. How are you going to persuade them? How are you going to reach them? And what is your message to them?
Well, first of all, I'm not leading with, my opinions about vaccines. But what I say to people is show me where I got it wrong. Show me where I got my science wrong. I've written books about this. I wrote a book about a link between thimerosal and autism that has, I think, 450 distilled scientific studies that confirm and validate that hypothesis, and 1,400 references. And if I got something wrong, show me where it is.
But I think people have shown you where things are wrong.
No, I just won't.
I'm just not going to do it. I won't do it because I don't know what I'm talking about. And listen to what she said. Listen to this garbage. First of all, she's interrupting him again. And second of all, she won't show him what he got wrong so they can have an honest conversation about it. She's just doing broad stroke smears. And then when he actually starts to respond, she just talks over him and interrupts him.
Where it is.
But I think people have shown you where things are wrong, but you don't want to hear it. Is because I've seen, new.
Crystal, did you just say that you think people have shown him where he's wrong and he doesn't want to hear it? Because that's weird, because he just literally said that he'd like to hear where he's wrong. He just literally said that. I'd like to hear where I'm wrong. And instead of you telling him where he's wrong, you tell him he doesn't want to hear the thing he just said that he wanted to hear. Actually, it sounds like you, Crystal, don't want to hear it. You don't want to hear it.
Also, this past week, we have several whistleblowers from the FBI. Notably, one who talked in great detail about how the FBI persecuted him and his family for becoming a whistleblower. The persecution of whistleblowers has been something that's been long on my radar and a concern for this country, because this is the life-giving knowledge that we need for wrongdoing, because the criminals aren't going to come out and tell us until it's safe 4 years later that they did these things.
One of our great members, the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Gates. Thank you, Chairman Jordan, for your leadership. The FBI has been victimized by political capture, and that politicization has manifested in the targeting of Americans who never deserve to have this government weaponized against them. Whistleblowers saw those bad acts. They stepped forward and they were retaliated against and crushed as a consequence. And our work today will build on the work of Special Counsel Durham, who said recently that at the FBI there is confirmation bias, an overwillingness to rely on information from individuals connected to political opponents and action without appropriate objectivity. One of the whistleblowers we'll hear from today served in the United States Marine Corps, served as a local cop, Garrett O'Boyle, and this is his testimony regarding that political capture.
Do you believe that the FBI has become political?
I do. I think most people out in the field try to avoid that politicization of the agency, which is good, but it's gotten to a point, it seems to me, that it's like a cancerous point where the FBI has let itself become enveloped in this politicization and weaponization that I don't know how to even begin to fix it.
One group that saw that weaponization work against them were Catholics. The FBI field office in Richmond put out a memo saying that violent extremists would find the Catholic ideology attractive and would attempt to connect with Catholic adherents, that extremists would show an interest in Catholic congregations over the next 12 to 24 months leading up to the presidential election. Isn't that an interesting coincidence? And the memo calls for the FBI to develop sources with Catholic congregations to try to obtain information about those folks. Another group that saw weaponization turn against them, parents who attended school board meetings. You'll hear today from Steve Friend, who worked for the FBI and actually found himself ridiculed at his own FBI office because he too was a parent who attended a school board meeting. This is Steve Friend.
Given your law enforcement background, does knowing that you could be investigated by the FBI for speaking up at your child's school board meeting chill parents from exercising their First Amendment rights?
Yes.
And you said you had attended a school board meeting and you were nervous that you could be under federal investigation. Is that correct?
Yes, my colleagues teased me about it.
So we're going to break into those stories. I want you to hear some of that testimony. Sound bites aren't enough. You need to understand context. So we're going to do that tonight. Also, Elon Musk's several stories this week. Let's see. Elon gets subpoenaed for the Epstein trial. That's one.
Elon Musk actually, just this week, we can put E1 up on the screen. He's been subpoenaed in the Jeffrey Epstein suit that is being brought by the Virgin Islands. So if you haven't been following this, basically the Virgin Islands is in a lawsuit against JP Morgan because they believe JP Morgan was enabling the Epstein sex trafficking operation, essentially, that JP Morgan knew that the bank knew he was engaged in this kind of conduct and was enabling it by giving him access to the banking services. They deny, JP Morgan denies that it had any knowledge of Epstein's crime, but the Virgin Islands is basically saying, as Reuters puts it, that they missed red flags about Epstein's abuse of women. Now, a Monday filing in U.S. District Court in Manhattan hit Musk and said that he may have been referred to JP Morgan by Epstein. So they subpoenaed him for records related to this. Musk says, quote, "That cretin," referring to Epstein, "never advised me on anything whatsoever." He put out this tweet. You can see it on the screen. We just read that part of it. "The notion that I would need to or listen to financial advice from a dumb crook is absurd. JP Morgan let Tesla down 10 years ago despite having Tesla's global commercial banking business, which we then withdrew. I have never forgiven them."
Elon says you can't make fun of the new CEO or you'll be permanently banned. That's another one. And then Elon said Soros is Magneto. He's some sort of comic book super villain.
But it was these tweets from earlier this week which really set off the media, where he said that George Soros reminds him of Magneto, the supervillain from the DC Comics films. Then one of the Krasensteins, those twin soy boy brothers who obsessively replied to every single tweet that Donald Trump posted, replied to Elon now because obviously Donald Trump's not using Twitter. And so now they're obsessively replying to everything that Elon posts, saying, fun fact, Magneto's experience during the Holocaust as a survivor shaped his perspective as well as his depth and empathy. He goes on to say, Soros, also a Holocaust survivor, gets attacked nonstop for his good intentions, which some Americans think are bad merely because they disagree with his political affiliations. Musk responded to that saying, you assume they are good intentions. They are not. He wants to erode the very fabric of civilization. Soros hates humanity. And here's a not-so-fun fact, Brian Krasenstein. George Soros actually participated in the expulsion of the Jews during World War II and the confiscation of their property. And he says that he's not sorry about it, and he doesn't feel bad about it either, because he has no conscience.
My understanding is that you went out with this protector of yours who swore that you were his adopted godson.
Yes.
Went out, in fact, and helped in the confiscation of property from the Jews.
That's right. Yes.
I mean, that sounds like an experience that would send lots of people to the psychiatric couch for many, many years. Was it difficult?
Not at all. Not at all. Maybe as a child you don't see the connection. But it created no problem at all.
No feeling of guilt?
No. Well, actually, funny way, it's just like in markets that if I weren't there, of course I wasn't doing it, but somebody else would be taking it away anyhow. And it was whether I was there or not, I was only a spectator, the property was being taken away. So I had no role in taking away that property. So I had no sense of guilt.
Are you religious?
No.
Do you believe in God?
No.
And as you know, criticizing George Soros isn't allowed in America. So the liberal media is very upset with Elon. This from the Washington Compost. Musk says George Soros hates humanity, compares him to Jewish supervillain. The ADL is upset and has issued a statement denouncing him. The Times of Israel says that the entire country of Israel is now accusing Elon Musk of stoking anti-Semitism on Twitter. Elon probably didn't even know the backstory of the Magneto character and most likely just happened to see one of the movies where in part he's played by this guy, Ian McKellen. It plays like a future version of him, I think. And he does look like George Soros with those massive bags under his eyes. But as you know, you're not allowed to criticize someone who happens to be Jewish, even if your criticism has absolutely nothing to do with their ethnicity whatsoever.
Often when there is dissent expressed in the United States against policies of the Israeli government, people here are called anti-Semitic. What is your response to that as an Israeli Jew?
Well, it's a trick. We always use it.
So we're going to break into those icebergs of stories and see where they interlace. Epstein, he's everywhere these days, isn't he? Noam Chomsky, next story, taking Epstein money, laundering it. Whoa, what's going on? Why does Epstein need to send hundreds of thousands of dollars to Chomsky and vice versa and these sort of things? We're going to look at that story a little bit more because remember, Chomsky, he's the cunning linguist who said, let the people who aren't jabbed figure out how they get their food, but they won't get it from society. So we have a longer memory than he probably does at this point. So,
okay, let's go to the next one here. This one, old Noam Chomsky, and just the Jeffrey Epstein story. It never really does die, does it? So let's go ahead and put this one up on the screen. This is it's hard to say for somebody who is certainly respected. The book that we have literally on the shelf, which I've always thought was very important, foundational to understanding manufacturing consent and media incentives and all that by the intellectual Noam Chomsky, linguist, somebody, I still do respect, I guess, somewhat intellectually.
You still respect his scholarship.
I can respect his scholarship. That said, we now have proof from the Wall Street Journal that Jeffrey Epstein moved $270,000 for Noam Chomsky and paid an additional $150,000 to an academic named Leon Botstein. So what the journal says is that this transfer between accounts for Noam Chomsky, the two academics, have all been confirmed both by Chomsky as well as financial records that the Wall Street Journal has been able to get their hands on, says that Chomsky met with Epstein, not just the one time that we had previously said, but actually on multiple occasions. Now, Chomsky says that they, quote, met occasionally to discuss political and academic topics. And in response to those questions, actually what they say is that previously one of the payoffs, this is to Botstein, was $150,000 because Epstein had donated a sum to Bard that year as more than a $1 million donation. A spokesperson then said that they did receive this like weird pass-through donation through Leon Botstein. Not exactly sure what's going on there. With Chomsky, he doesn't really have a particularly good explanation. He says he received a March 8, 2018 transfer of $270,000 from an Epstein account. He says, quote, "It was restricted to a rearrangement of my own funds and did not involve one penny from Epstein." He explained he had asked him for help, quote, "with a technical matter that involved the disbursement of common funds related to his first marriage." He says, "My wife died 15 years ago. We paid no attention to financial issues. We asked Epstein for advice. The simplest way would be to transfer funds from one account in my name to another by way of his office." Chomsky said he did not hire Epstein. It was just a quick and a simple transfer of funds. Look, I mean, maybe.
We're looking at that story. And last but not least, Bilderberg number 70 is going on. And you all know Harari snuck it in the back door over there at Bilderberg. We want to see what he had to say to that audience. Jason Burmis has a clip from this past week articulating and offering such purveyance of valuable nuggets in the New World Order's World Economic Forum plan for your future.
Presidential race in 2024 and try to imagine the impact of the new AI tools that can mass produce political manifestos, fake news stories, and even holy scriptures for new cults. In recent years, the politically influential QAnon cult has formed around anonymous online texts known as Q-drops. Now, followers of this cult, which are millions now in the US and the rest of the world, collected, revered, and interpreted these Q-drops as some kind of new scriptures, as a sacred text. Now, to the best of our knowledge, all previous Q-drops were composed by human beings, and bots only helped to disseminate these texts online.
And they lied to you, by the way, and told you they were Russian bots when they were not Russian bots, when it was the team of Microchip, Mackey, McConney, and others. Okay, so remember, they lie to you all the time. They're trying to base this in now religious texts and political views. Again, this is the guy that's not on the list, but he's at Bilderberg this year in the big AI. And it's not just Sam Altman, by the way, that was there. They've got DeepMind there. Microsoft is there. Head of the World Economic Forum is there. This is it, man. This is the most... Charlie Skelton called it the most potent Bilderberg possibly of all time in their now, I believe it is 69-year career. This is it.
What a great opportunity for a natural disaster.
No.
Everybody pray. Everybody pray. Hurricane, earthquake.
Dude, get with it, bro. We already have
volcano,
the geoengineering technology to knock out a hurricane, just to let you know. It's going to be bright skies and sunshine out in Lisbon, Portugal the next couple days, guys. In fact, I would bet it's the best weather in the world. If somehow you're local, go visit. It's going to be great out there, I promise you.
We might see the first cults and religions in history whose revered texts were written by a non-human intelligence. And of course, religions throughout history.
Isn't the whole idea behind Judaism, Catholicism, and even Islam that a non-human entity wrote the religious texts?
That's what he says. He's bringing that up.
No, he's saying that now because it's going to be computer. But I'm saying the original non-human author was supposed to be God, right?
Listen, again, he makes that. He says he in the last 10 seconds he makes that. And he says basically that was Johnny Nonsense before, but now it's real because it's AI. So he disregards any of the texts of being any possibility of a deity, right? And claims that this is really like the ultimate deity. Well, listen.
That their holy books were written by a non-human intelligence. This was never true before. This could become true very, very quickly.
All right, without further ado, let's get this show on the road. We got two guests tonight. Sean Stone's coming in, and we've also got author of the Google Archipelago, Michael Rechtenwald. Let's get started with Luke Rudowski from wearechange.org and thebestpoliticalshirts.com.
Mr. Brenda, I'm sure you're a very productive meeting. Lisbon is a lovely city. I have just one question. I'd like to get a quick comment. The Great Reset mantra of "you will own nothing and be happy." Do you think that was a mantra that was ill-conceived, or is that really a good idea that the World Economic Forum promotes globally? Just one comment on that, sir. You will own nothing and be happy. I mean, you clearly own some stuff and you're happy, but what about the rest of the world? Just one comment, sir, on how the World Economic Forum came up with the idea, you will own nothing and be happy. Did you have a pleasant stay in Lisbon? Well, I wish you a nice flight.
Oh, you know, that's just the president of the World Economic Forum, probably going on his first-class flight or maybe private jet, as of course he tells you to own nothing.
What makes the Grand Theft World podcast unique, invigorating, exciting, and informative? Most other podcasts out there are either doing straight up interviews or they're just covering the daily news. They're covering current events from the day they happened. And that is effective. It's useful. It's a great starting point. And then sometimes these current events change during the week past the first story. So we like to give it a little time. You have to wait till some of the dust settles on these stories in order to give them accurate coverage. And the other thing that's really missing in the media landscape is covering the articles that are coming out every day. That's great. That's necessary. But who's bringing in contextual history so that you can understand what has been going on for decades and decades to lead up to the machinations and actions that we see unfolding today? So what we do here on the podcast is we cover current events. Many of these things are censored, but we wait about a week. As a forensic historian, I focused mainly through my career on the history of globalism and collectivism and things that they call maybe the New World Order. There's a lot of facts to these sort of circumstances, groups, events, activities, working groups that they've had over time. So for Grand Theft World listeners, we not only break down the current events, most of which that are censored during the week, we provide you with contextual history, we give you the source notes, the references, we do deep dives, and this really empowers you with an understanding of context and history so that you can make more informed decisions in your life. There's also a community, a membership where you guys can actually ask questions and we can get into the show and share evidence. And there's a town hall weekly for Grand Theft World for those who listen to it and are interested in covering the stories that we don't get to during a 6-hour show. Listening to it an hour a day, you could easily consume the week's news, but you're going to have substance and meaning and context and understanding. And with that, you can make higher quality decisions in your life. So if you're interested in more quality in your life, go to grandtheftworld.com, click podcast at the top, and we'll see you there. Thank you.
These allegations are false.
This isn't Grand Theft Auto, folks. This isn't a video game.
What are the most surprising things that you discovered once you started pulling on that thread? Who he was connected to, what institutions he was influential over, what events he participated in?
Come on, man. What are we talking about? Come on, man. No.
You don't have to think about it, dude.
I got this quote because you said you didn't know much about Klaus Schwab. I made it my job to, as soon as this happened, I'm like, okay, this guy's their front man. Let me learn about the official history of the World Economic Forum. I got their 40-year history. I got every book that Klaus Schwab has written or ghostwritten. I went through those books. This is one of the most interesting passages.
Come on, man. Come